Welcome, everybody. I am the loud little ducky. Today, we're continuing on with witnesses in the Karen Read retrial. We are going to talk about Trooper Yuri Bukhenik. Today, he took the stand on day 12 and was witness number 25 for the Commonwealth. And they tried to use Bukhenik for a replacement to Trooper Paul. And not Trooper Paul, Trooper Procter. My bad. So many Brians, so many P's, so many troopers, but former Trooper Procter. The Commonwealth does not want to call Procter, obviously. Procter is bad for the Commonwealth. And Hank Brennan is trying to act like he doesn't exist. Whether the jury thinks that Trooper former Trooper Procter, dishonorably discharged Trooper Procter, is fired, no longer around, possibly deceased. We don't know what they're thinking. And they're just not wanting to call him. So everything that Bukhenik needs to testify is one, about his own stuff, and then two, about the things that he was around for with Procter. Now, I think Lally tried to do this during the first trial, and the defense was like, "No, you're not you're not bringing in Proctor stuff with Bukhenik or Bukhenik, Trooper B, whatever you want to call him." Um, so, but I think Hank Brennan fought back harder, and the judge is allowing Bukhenik to testify to a lot of stuff that Proctor did because he was there and he saw it with his own eyes, even though he didn't necessarily do it. He can't say what Proctor has said, like verbally or anything, but he can describe what Proctor did because he was a witness to it. So that's how they're using him. Y'all let me know down in the comments whether y'all think that this was a smart idea. They are just hiding Proctor. And I would love to know what the jurors are thinking about hearing this man's name and his hands being in everything and on everything, and that he's not being called to the stand to tell any information. So one of the first things that Buchanan gets, that they get to when he's on the stand is, he wants to say, y'all work as a team, right? Y'all aren't just individuals, and there's no lead. There's always a lead investigator, whether you want to call him a lead investigator, a case agent, or a case officer, whatever. There's always a lead that's in charge of that particular case. And I don't care how Proctor became that person, whether it was because he was on that shift and it was just going to automatically be assigned to him, or if it was assigned to anybody else. I don't care. But to fight that there's no such thing as a lead investigator is crazy. So, but they're like, no, we work as a team, like we're a unit. And he talks about, oh, people can retire and get fired and sometimes die off the job. And we know there have been plenty of people who have retired. We know that Proctor was fired, and we know that Chief Berkowitz from Canton PD is now deceased. So he's bringing up those three things because there are people in this case that in the beginning they were around. And since then, some have retired, some have been fired, and some have died. But do they think Proctor died? Um, he says that, that Bukhenik says that he was Trooper Proctor's supervisor and that on January 29th, 2022, Bukhenik called Proctor around 6:44 a.m. and they went to Canton PD and they were shown the broken cocktail glass and they were shown the Stop and Shop bag that had the 6 red Solo cups with snow and blood. I mean, we could say possibly blood or brownish reddish stains like the lab, but I mean, it was blood, um, in it. And he knew that between Canton PD and the Alberts, he says there is a loose, familiar connection. Well, I don't know if I would call it loose. Like if it was a cousin or something, that would be one thing. But when the homeowners of 34 Fairview, their brother works at Canton PD, and then another brother is a town selectman over the police department, I don't think that's loose familiar connection. That's direct familial connection. If he wants to say loose because it wasn't the homeowner directly being a an officer at Canton, okay. I wouldn't call it loose. It's like the homeowner's brothers are in charge of this thing of Canton PD. So he knows that they recuse themselves from the interviews, not the entire case, just the interviews. But there is conflicting testimony from the first trial and this one as whether it was supposed to be the whole entire case that they were recused from or interviewing people. But the thing is when they were interviewing people, Kevin Albert or Chris Albert, I think it was Kevin Albert, was still in charge of setting up interviews. So for somebody that's recused because of loose familiar connections, why is that particular Albert setting up interviews? That's not recused. That's them actively taking part in this. Maybe they weren't in the interview, but they were still setting things up and talking to people. We don't know what they said when they were like, "Come in for your interview. Hey, Proctor wants to interview you." Um, he could have said, "Maybe stick to the story or make sure this and that." Like, you don't know what he said. He's involved. And to act like he's not is disingenuous. And because of Canton PD needing to recuse themselves, Buchanan said, they lost manpower that they would normally have in an investigation because they're down Canton PD. And Canton PD can't help with this case. Not an excuse for shitty investigation, but they're like, we didn't have enough manpower. They wanted to speak to people that were at the scene, and they had heard a statement about Karen Reed saying, "I hit him." And then they go to the hospital. When they get to the hospital, Karen Reed has already been discharged from her psych hold that she was under. But they do interview Brian Albert, Matt McCabe, and Jen McCabe. They collected the pile of clothes, and Bukhenik says at this point in his direct testimony with Hank Brennan that the clothes were at the foot of the bed. Well, we know they're not at the foot of the bed because we've seen pictures of them on the floor. But, sometimes they're at the foot of the bed, sometimes they're at the clothes. Okay. Maybe he just is misremembering where the clothes were. later on, he does say the floor. So, it is what it is, but and that wouldn't be such a big thing if there wasn't so much other shady stuff going on. But by saying they're on the bed makes it look like they're trying to hide the fact that they were just on the hospital floor being contaminated. He says that when they were in John O'Keefe's room, there were 3 people in the room, and it was himself, Procter, and the crime scene person. And the crime scene person photographed John O'Keefe, um, and Buchanan, said he saw the injuries to John O'Keefe's body. They were shown a picture, which is not a picture that we got to see in the first trial, of the clothes on the floor, and then you can see John O'Keefe's legs with his socks on, which I've heard a lot of people ask about these socks. Like, where are the socks? Because we have not seen those in evidence. We have also not seen the boxers in evidence. But we know he had boxers on. And then in the first trial, it came out that there was vomit in his boxer shorts, which has a whole nother problem if he was flung backwards and landed on his back and hit his head, how did, when he vomit, it go down his shirt and his pants and get into his boxer shorts if he was laying flat back? Like, it should have gone this way, and he could have aspirated on it because he was laying flat and not sitting up. But that hasn't been talked about or explained in this trial. We don't know anything about the socks. Did they test the socks? Were the socks clean? Because they should have had some grass and snow and stuff on them possibly. But if they're saying he was flung out of his shoes, then maybe they wouldn't. But you would think that the heels would at least have it on there. So I don't know. It's just interesting. He says that he saw, pulling of blood from the back of his head, and it was on the sheets from the head injury, where the head injury bled. That he could see large swelling and discoloration under the eyelids and pulling of blood, which I don't know, because his eyes wouldn't have been opened at this point. They would have closed them, right? And so I don't know how he was able to see that. Maybe he did. But said he saw pulling of blood. He said there were no abrasions or injuries to the area. There was a cut to the eyelid, which that would be an injury to the area. But, then you say, oh, there was a cut to the eyelid, and then there was a cut on his nose. And I thought during the first trial that it was like inside of his nose, but it sounds like it was just like on top of his nose. And that he remembers seeing cuts and bruises on the right arm, which that gets talked about in cross. And there was no injury to the inside of his arm. So just these right here, nothing here. And he states that on the back of his hand, he had like a light bruise. He doesn't know what it's come from, but just, cuts and scrapes to the arm. And that both eyes were swollen at this point. They said that they were there between 12:30 and 2 p.m., so they were there for quite a while. They identified the items of clothing by item and bagged them. They apparently, during the time that they were at the hospital, got a phone call at 1:24 p.m. from Jen McCabe. Proctor talked to Jen for 1 minute and 9 seconds, and that's the phone call that made them go and want to talk to Karen Read and look at her vehicle and get her vehicle. And Jen McCabe learned this after talking to Brian Albert. So we have Brian Albert and Jen McCabe have convinced Yuri Bukhenik and former Trooper Procter to go look at this car because they're talking about taillight pieces, I guess. He talks about that the clothes were soaking wet with moisture and there was other debris on the clothes. Well, yeah, if he's laying in the grass or the snow and then the clothes are put on the ambulance floor and then they're once again put on the hospital floor, yeah, there's going to be a lot of debris on those clothes. They did say that they touched John O'Keefe's body and they moved John O'Keefe's body. Maybe that's why his arm was laying flat and how they saw the scratches here. Maybe they lifted his arm and saw that there was nothing under here. But when they were touching John O'Keefe, they were wearing personal protective equipment, gloves and possibly masks and stuff like that. Um, at this point, they knew that they had a missing sneaker because only one sneaker was found. And then their theory evolved to a vehicle strike based on, even though they never went to the scene, because of the shoes and the arm scratches, they automatically assumed vehicle collision. Looking at the arm injuries and a missing shoe does not say, "Hey, this was a car crash." So I don't know why that's what they said. But they said they never went to 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022. Um, so he's saying because we never went, there was no possibility for us to place evidence or prevent evidence from being altered or concealed. Like they could have had no part in that because they never were even on scene. That's their story. We have no proof vouching for that or not vouching for that. People are like, no, they weren't there. Well, Tully was there. There were some other people that were there that could have done things. And they don't have a log of who was at 34 Fairview. They didn't write that down. So they go and talk to Karen Read, who they believe is the last person who saw him. And there was an objection about this because they don't know if Karen Read was the last person to see him. They think he was, but they don't know if truthfully Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Jen McCabe, all of them, they don't know because they didn't investigate to see if maybe people inside 34 Fairview were actually the last people to see him. But he wanted to make sure, he said Karen Read was the last person who saw him, which that's something that the jury is going to have to decide. Was Karen Read the last person to see him alive? She could still very well be the last person who saw him alive, and he could have drunkenly fall back and hit his head, and Chloe or some other animal could have gone out to pee and jumped on him because he's not good with strangers, and Chloe's like, this is my bathroom time, and who are you in the yard? I don't know you. And then Chloe tries to bite and attack him, and in doing that, he falls backward and hits his head because he doesn't have great stability because he's drunk. Um, and if that's the case, then Karen Read could still be the last person to see him. And then they call Chloe in, inside from the bathroom, going outside to go to the restroom. That could have happened. That hasn't been unproven. And so they wanted to see the car. So they go to Dighton, to Karen Reed's parents' house. And they're like, we knew about a missing shoe. We knew about her "I hit him" statements, which they heard from Jen at that point. Um, he drove his personal vehicle to Dighton. He did not drive a police cruiser to Dighton, which answers why there is no dash cam footage of them following the tow truck on its way back to Canton PD Sallyport, because that would have been something that would have been really good for them to have too, is if they had dash cam footage that showed Karen Reed's taillight being broken. But there's not any, because he took his personal vehicle, because he said none of the police vehicles would have made it to Dighton in that weather. So he had to take his vehicle. They got to Dighton around 3 p.m. He said that Karen Reed asked about damage. She said that she doesn't know how the taillight. She said that she made a 3-point turn and left. And he says that Karen Reed said that she never saw him go into the house. The thing is Karen Reed can remember making a 3-point turn. But there's going to be a time where evidence comes, and either she made the 3-point turn in front of 34 Fairview, and that's when they're going to say the accident happened, or by vehicle data and GPS location data, she made the 3-point turn before even dropping John off. So she can remember maybe at some point she knew she made a 3-point turn. From the sounds of it, there's not any data that we have seen that supports her making 2 3-point turns. So we're going to have to figure that out. And so that is a scenario where Karen Reed's statements don't align with the evidence. She said that she made a 3-point turn and then she left. Well, the vehicle data shows that she made a 3-point turn while John was in the car still, before they made their way to 34 Fairview. So Karen isn't remembering everything correctly. So when these people are taking the "I hit him" statements, oh, she admitted to hitting him. Well, if she can't even remember what time and when she made this 3-point turn, she's saying she made the 3-point turn and then left. But the data doesn't support Karen Reed's statement. So even if she said, "I hit him," or "Could I have hit him?" if the data doesn't support that, then it couldn't have happened, because the vehicle would show if she made a 3-point turn or not at that point in time. But from what we know, it doesn't. So we can take Karen's word for this statement, but we can't take her word on this statement. Just because somebody testifies to something or says something doesn't mean that that's actually true. That's taking people's word. I am not one that takes people's word. I want the receipts. I want you to show me. I tell my kids when they're like, "Oh, my room is clean." Well, I'm not taking your word for that. I need you to show me. I need you to send me a video. I need you to show me pictures. And if you fail to show me under the bed or in the closet, I'm going to ask for a picture or a video of that if I am not at the house and you're trying to go somewhere. So I'm not going to take your word for it. I need you to show me that this is exactly what happened, because eyewitnesses and memories, because false memories can be implanted and you can be misremembering things, or you can be remembering things that other people told you. People's retelling sometimes is not accurate. That's why you need to look into it and check facts for yourself. But anyways, Bukhenik says he asked about how John O'Keefe got the injuries. The Karen Reed didn't answer about that. um, that um, and then a new statement for this trial is that apparently Karen Read just randomly, once again, because we know she's just been making random statements out of the blue, um, like the what's, who is this person? She's like, I hit him. Well, the answer would have been John O'Keefe. Like, he's a Boston police officer. I dropped him off at the park. Like, that's who he is. Not who is he? I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. Just like that. So now he's saying that just randomly out of the blue, Karen starts telling a story that John O'Keefe had bumped his head 2 days prior at somebody else's house, and that John O'Keefe had asked Karen Read about it. So apparently, when John was still alive, a couple of days prior, John O'Keefe had bumped his head. And then John O'Keefe was like, hey, I bumped my head at such and such's house the other night. Like, maybe he said, do I have a concussion, or do you remember me bumping my head? Maybe my head hurts. Like, what? It's just a random thing. Um, I don't know if Karen Read actually said this or if this is something they're saying she said. She was also told that her car and her phone were going to be seized. They did not have a warrant for it, but they were going to take it anyways. Now, Karen Read could have said, no, you're not taking anything without a warrant, and waited for them to get a warrant. She didn't. She let them have her car, and she let them have her phone. And they did not put the phone in a Faraday bag to make sure that it stayed in the condition and the state, and the information was the same from when they collected it, that nothing could be overwritten. They didn't put it in airplane mode, so texts can still continue to come in that weren't there previously. Emails can come in. The data on the phone can change and overwrite because they didn't take the proper steps in securing the phone to keep it in the state that it is. Karen Read gave them a credit card like key fob, which is interesting. I had never heard or seen a credit card like key fob. I've seen the ones that look like keys, or just they're like the normal, like little remote things, even for like the press starts and things like that. But hers was like a credit card looking type key, which interesting. They loaded the Lexus on the tow truck at about 4:16 p.m., which is caught on the alarm.com footage that Karen Read's parents had on their house. He says that he doesn't recall seeing Procter manipulate the phone, and he tried to say we were near the vehicle once, but we never touched it. Well, he doesn't get to testify to we. He gets to testify to him. He doesn't get to testify that Procter didn't touch it. He didn't get to testify that Procter was necessarily doing things. He has to testify about him. He can say that I never saw Procter touch it. Or I never saw Procter go near it. But he can't say we as then they're one, because they're not one. As much as he wants to be like it's a team effort, like, no, you are an individual and you get to testify to your stuff. Another thing that was interesting at the hospital that I forgot to go over is we have gone through all 5 of the senses. So in trial 1, Trooper Paul, the accident reconstruction for MSP, he testified that the scene spoke to him and told him, this is what happened. Okay. So we have speaking and hearing the crime scene. right? Hearing and speaking. And then we have Bukhenik, this trial, saying that he could smell and touch and taste the scene. Like you're just morphed into it and you can smell it and touch it and taste it. And I'm like, please tell me you did not lick John O'Keefe. What are you talking about? You tasted the scene. The crime scene spoke to you. It told you things. No, the crime scene doesn't talk. The evidence can show you things, but and a dead body can be an awful smell. But they're like, between the two of them in these two trials, we've had speaking and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching. And I'm like, what are y'all on? Have y'all taken some shrooms? Because what? Don't taste scenes. Do not go lick anything in a crime scene. I don't advise it. Okay, so getting back to their indictment. So they drove the vehicle. Procter was with Bukhenik, and with Bukhenik and Procter in the personal vehicle, and then Karen Reed's SUV is on the tow truck, and Procter and Bukhenik followed the tow truck all the way from Dighton to Canton PD, and they arrived back to the Sallyport at around 5:30 to 5:35. They said around this time, Lieutenant Tully had dispatched people to 34 Fairview. That was the CERT team. Um, and the reason that they took the vehicle to Canton PD, even though they passed other places that they could have held Karen Reed's vehicle, they did it because Canton has a heated garage, so the snow and ice can melt off of the vehicle. And then it was also closest to the Norfolk County DA's office, where MSP works out of, and, Canton PD, where the incident happened. So it was just a convenient location for them to take it to Canton PD instead of some other place. Even though the car ends up going to some other place at a later date. I don't know why they couldn't have originally just taken it there, but they did. And so then on February 1st, they things are documented by crime scene services. They took swabs from DNA from the outside of the tail light, not the internal, not inside the tail light where it was cracked, outside portions and back of the car. That was done on February 1st, so several days later. They also pulled the taillight housing out. They took pictures of the inside of the vehicle and outside the vehicle. It's where all the vehicle pictures are taken from. And they put up crime scene tape to prevent people from touching the car. I'm sorry, but that tape is not going to keep anybody from touching it. You're not supposed to. But it's not like it's just locked and barricaded off to where nobody can mess with it. You know what would help is footage of when that car was stored and that you can see clearly with no missing time jumps, no blurry cameras, no inverted stuff, that you can see clearly. We looked at the footage and there's no footage missing, and we saw nobody messing with it. But the caution tape, which, yay, they finally used it. It didn't work at the scene apparently because it was too windy and they didn't have anything to anchor the stuff to correctly. But how many times do we see people can lift the caution tape and go under it? Maybe you could lower it and step over it. Maybe you could just push the tape inward with your body and still get to what you want to mess with. Like, that tape is not keeping anybody from messing with it, but you can say it did. A video proving that nobody messed with it would have been even better, and then you'd be able to back that statement up a little bit more. That night on January 29th, they stayed in the Sallyport area until 5:51. The reason they want to make sure that people know that they didn't leave the Sallyport area until after 5:51 is because the first taillight pieces are found at 5:45. So if they can say that they did not leave the Sallyport to go drop any pieces off at the crime scene before the first taillight piece was found, it couldn't have been Bukhenik and it couldn't have been Procter. We don't have any proof if that's how long that they were there, but that's what is said. He talks about how him and Procter spent the whole day together. And then the evening after the CERT team had done their initial search, and then there was even a search before that in the lawn with the leaf blower and stuff. So we've had 2 searches already on January 29th, 2022. They had they went into the conference room at Canton PD to discuss the case. At the meeting, it was himself, Tully, Procter, and some others, or 4 others maybe. They wanted to take shovels and rakes and go back to 34 Fairview to look for more evidence. They didn't end up going that night. They went several days later. And they also wanted to find the hat because nobody had found John O'Keefe's hat at this point yet. Then they get into the clothes, and he says that, they dried the clothes naturally. They laid the clothes to dry on butcher paper. And they went into some office. Don't know who has key cards to that particular office, but other people do. And on that office floor at the police department, they laid out butcher paper on the floor. Not on a table, not on a drying rack. A drying rack would have been best because air flows both areas, where butcher paper, not so much. You could still get mildew and trapped moisture with butcher paper, but you're laying it on the floor of an office. Are you kidding me? Where somebody could go into that office and accidentally kick the stuff and then have to relay it out so that it can dry properly? And it took several days for this stuff to dry out on butcher paper. Well, maybe if you would have used proper drying mechanisms, it would have been dried sooner. Because how many of us have hung clothes that are soaping wet from the pool, and you've gone and put your bathing suit just outside to dry, or over your tub, or over your shower curtain rod, or a drying rack, and it just is dry and within 24 hours. But not at Canton PD. It took several days for it to dry. And then once they were dry, they moved them, and then they were bagged. He looks at the evidence bags, and he describes the clothes, and he shows the jeans first. The jeans look a little bit different than from trial 1. Now, I don't know if this jean pocket was completely ripped last year and they had it pinned up to where it didn't fall. This year, that pin, or even if it wasn't ripped all the way last year, that pocket is like torn in half. Like it can fold half over. The pocket is messed up. Could that be from dragging? What did the pocket get caught on? Did it just come from them mishandling the evidence really badly? Or has it always been that way, but they've had it pinned, and when they lay them to take a picture of the back part, they just have that jean pocket folded up where it naturally lays and you can't really see it. But in pictures that I've seen, that pocket it looks like there was a little tear, and then the rest of it was still stitched. So I would like to know how the rest of that pocket ripped. Because handle your evidence better. There's no reason that should be mistreated so badly that it looks like that. Um, then, and he is not the one that booked that into evidence. Then he gets up and shows a sneaker. Well, he opens the bag before reading the bag. You know, maybe you should check to make sure that that's the correct piece of evidence before you have them open the bag and then have them look at it after you've already taken this evidence out. He gets up and he shows a sneaker. And he's like, "And that sneaker is the one that y'all got from the hospital." And Buchanan looks at the bag and he says, "No, this is the one that was found at 34 Fairview." Huh. That's interesting because the one that was found at 34 Fairview was shown yesterday or the day before. So, and we know that both shoes were not found at 34 Fairview. Unless you want to say, well, John was found at 34 Fairview, so technically his shoe that was on his foot was also found at 34 Fairview, but that's not where they got the shoe. They got the shoe from the hospital. So maybe they have them both marked as 34 Fairview because that's just their go-to. And so from what we know, it's not the hospital sneaker. He shows the right sneaker, like the right foot sneaker. But he should have been showing maybe the left, or it was just labeled wrong, or they put the wrong shoe in the wrong bag when they sealed it all up after trial 1 last year. I don't know, but it's not a good look in front of the jury when the defense is saying they are neglectful, incompetent, and possibly corrupt. They do not do proper police protocols. They are sloppy with their work, and they can't even keep their evidence straight, and you saw it for yourself, jury. They don't even know what shoe is what. It's not even labeled properly, and you've seen it fumble in front of your own eyes. And if they can't even bring it in here to show you, jury, that they have a clean investigation and it's done with honor and integrity, and you know, they're doing it carefully and following protocols, you saw with your own eyes that that's not true. Not a good look for the Commonwealth. Now they took a break after this mishap, and then they sorted it out, and then they came back and they were like, "Here's the sneaker," and then they act like the whole thing just didn't even happen. So I don't know if anybody's gonna bring that up in closing, if Judge Bev is going to even allow it, but that's where we're at with the sneaker. And so did they bring the wrong shoe into court? What shoe was brought in yesterday? You know what would have helped? Chain of custody of who checked out the shoe, when it went back, who checked it back in, whose hands have been on this, who's responsible for all this nonsense. But they don't have a chain of custody because why do we need to keep track of where our evidence is? Um, then something new is that this year with the 2 shirts that John O'Keefe wore, there was the short sleeve one that was like orange, and then there was the long two-tone, which was like light gray and dark gray, um, that he wore over his orange shirt. Those shirts this year are in large, plexiglass, things, which like, they're jerseys from, like, famous celebrity football players or basketball players, you know, they preserve the jerseys and in these stuff, and they were framed this year, and, uh, I don't think the orange shirt fully matters with that. Although it would be interesting if there's some punctate or puncture holes or stuff like that through the short sleeve, but the long sleeve shirt, if I was the defense, would not want that framed because I would want the jury to possibly be able to look at and be shown these other than pictures. I want them to look for themselves because pictures can be deceiving because they can be zoomed in or zoomed out. It could make them look bigger than they are. I want the jurors to be able to look at the holes that are in that long sleeve shirt that line up with where those markings are on John O'Keefe's arm. I don't like that I don't like that the long sleeve shirt is framed. But nothing was said about it. They just showed it. Jeans were not framed. And then on February 3rd, so several days after January 29th, February 3rd, they go to 34 Fairview finally, and they arrived about between 8 and 9:30. And they also wrote search warrants that morning. They photographed and found the hat finally, which they were looking for. Odd plastic, which looks like it's maybe from Tupperware or a takeout container. It doesn't really pertain to the case, but it was just some debris that was found in the yard. Some taillight pieces, and then they also have a debris canister of other debris that they found in a wax-sealed envelope, that has small pieces in it, which the lab is who put that in the small envelope. And it was DeChico. Evan Brent is the one who took the photographs, Procter and Bukhenik. There was also a straw found there, and they also focused on the lawn by the flagpole and the fire hydrant, as well as the asphalt berm in the yard of 34 Fairview. So they didn't really focus on the street. They checked the curb area, though. But those names, DeChico, Evan Brent, Procter, Bukhenik, Morris, or Moore wasn't there. Tully wasn't there. But those are names of people who are in that group chat that defense and the Commonwealth will get to with texts. So the people that are there on February 3rd collecting this evidence are similar to the people that are in the group chat text with Procter saying stuff to people in his unit. They eventually sealed things when all the pieces were in their bags. They were individually bagged and info was written on it. And they were sent to the lab. On February 10th, Bukhenik went back out there and he found some more pieces. No clue about where they were located. He didn't take any pictures that day. Why are you not taking pictures that day when a couple of days prior you were there and you took pictures? So why now, February 10th, you're not taking pictures, even with your cell phone? You know you're not supposed to use your cell phone for personal and business, but he says that their personal and their business phones are one and the same. They're not issued phones through MSP. And so he doesn't have any measurements of, is it 2 feet from the hydrant? Is it 4 feet from the flagpole? Was it close to the curb? Or, or pinpoint data points in your map or something. Just no location of where this was found. They're just like, this was found in this general vicinity. He doesn't remember if Procter was there when he went on the 10th, but he might have been. And then with those text messages, they get into a little bit of that, which is interesting because Brennan usually tries to ignore information that's not good for him, but he faces this head on a little bit. He says that, you were in a group, group text, and there were text chains, and you were involved in a text change where you thumbs up message that acknowledged that he had read one of the texts from Procter. And they read through the text chain later, and he doesn't say which one that on direct, he doesn't say which one that he thumbs up to acknowledge or whatever. And then he talks about, okay, so there was internal investigation and you were disciplined for failure to adequately supervise and for, the accuracy of review of Proctor or another officer. And the way you were disciplined was that you lost 5 vacation days. So he's writing inaccurate reviews of the people that he is supervising and that he is not supervising Proctor well. And he lost 5 vacation days for stuff in this case. And then they go through the text and he just reads them and says that Proctor said on August 17th, 2022, Proctor stated, going through his retarded client's phone. He said, no nudes. I hate that man. I really hate him. And then he also tries to act like he doesn't know who wrote these texts. He's like, well, it doesn't say Proctor. It just has a number and I don't know if that's his number. Sir, you were disciplined for these texts. Do not get up here and try to act like you don't know who wrote these texts in this chain, in this group chat. You know exactly who wrote them and you want to play dumb? Get out of here with that. Absolutely not. And so that's how they go over them. He doesn't even say which one that he liked. But we find out later the one that he acknowledged or liked was going through his retarded client's phone right now. He just acknowledged it, gave it a thumbs up. He didn't actually read it. He just acknowledged that he was going through her phone. No, sir, you liked that he was going through that attorney, David Yannetti's retarded client's phone. That's what you liked. And you are not like, hey, don't talk like that. This is not the place for that. Like, we can't be saying stuff like that. Like your supervisor would do. But also who's in there is Bukhenik's. Bukhenik, Trooper B, whatever, his supervisor is also in there. So we have Proctor's supervisor, and then Proctor's supervisor's supervisor is in this group chat. Group chat. Was Bukhenik's supervisor disciplined? No, they said he was on vacation, so he couldn't have possibly read these message. Or since he was on vacation, he can't actually discipline people underneath him while he's on vacation. He was off duty, so he can't acknowledge and tell his guys to cut it out because he was on vacation, which is bullshit. But whatever, because nobody looks at their phones when they're on vacation. Then they get into him watching. He watched the ring footage. He also saw the Waterfall and C.F. McCarthy videos, and that everybody left C.F. McCarthy's around 12:10 a.m. And I don't know why I have a note in here about hired Aperture. Oh, they hired Aperture in 2024. I don't know why I have that note there. Bukhenik says that at the Waterfall, he says that Karen is served 7 drinks. And then the ring video is put into evidence. And that is Bukhenik's direct. So we'll stop here for direct, and we'll do a part 2 for his cross-examination, which might be a longer video, but maybe we can do that one at a speedier rate too, since we've already gone over direct. And a lot of it is like pulling teeth. But go watch it for yourself. Go watch Bukhenik's testimony yourself. If you want to, compare trial 1 to trial 2. Jury doesn't know about what happened in trial 1 really, but let me know of what you think Hank Brennan did well or messed up on in the direct examination of Yuri Bukhenik. That is going to be it for me on this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Loud little ducky coming through, speaking truth, unabashed, calling out the liars, debunking falsehoods with a blast. I ain't afraid to say what's real, won't ever hold back. Gonna shake the system up, turn it all off track. I see through the smoke, the mirrors in the disguise, expose their hidden agenda. No more room for their lies. The truth is my weapon, I won't let it be concealed. I'm the voice for the voiceless, no longer gonna yield. In a world full of deception, I'm here to set it straight, bringing justice to the forefront. Won't accept their twisted fate. They may try to silence me, but my voice will still prevail. Sparking revolution, it's a truth-telling tale.